Hello, welcome back year 3. So we're going to continue with the chapter, and remember yesterday Susie had gone into the hazardous environment carriage to get ready to deliver a package, and she was about to put on a suit. So we'll take it from there. She shrugged off her dressing gown and climbed into the suit. The boots were so heavy that she had trouble lifting her feet, but she suspected that would be less of a problem once she was in the water. It was tight, as Wilmot had predicted, but the arms and legs had sections of concertinaed fabric sewn into them, so they stretched to fit. "Don't just leave me here." Frederick's voice was muffled by the fabric of her dressing gown, but it was loud enough to prompt Wilmot to look around. "What was that?" he said. "Oh, it was me," said Susie, in a voice that she was sure was too loud and too false. "I was just talking to myself." "My mum always says that's the first sign of going mad," he replied. "Of course, the last sign is painting yourself orange and sticking carrots up your nose." He looked worried. "You're not about to do that, are you?" "Don't worry," she said, trying to smile. "We've only got bananas on board." The HEC gave a final shudder as it came to the rest on the sea floor. "Right," he grinned. "Are you ready?" Almost. She turned her back on him and kneeled down, pretending to fiddle with the helmet. She slipped a hand into the pocket of her dressing gown and drew out the snow globe. "Be quiet," she whispered, raising it to her lips. Then she reached into the helmet and pushed the snow globe into the nose sock, which dangled down in front of her like an elephant's trunk, once she had pulled the helmet into place. "Let me do you up," said Wilmot. It was dark and echoey inside, and the sound of him fastening the clasps that sealed the helmet was deafening. Susie had never suffered from claustrophobia before, but as the seconds dragged on, she started to sweat with nerves. How would she cope outside under the water if she couldn't even handle this? This thought was interrupted when Wilmot gave the helmet a tap, and holding his hand up in front of the eye holes, gave her a thumbs up. "This way." He guided her to the large hatch in the wall, spinning the big brass wheel that unlocked it and pulling it open to reveal an airlock, a space the size of a cupboard with an identical hatch on the opposite side. Susie hesitated, suddenly hating the idea of being sealed inside that tiny space. "You'll have to attach your air hose once you're outside," Wilmot shouted, bringing his mouth up as close to the helmet as he could. "It's the bright red valve to your right." Susie forced herself to focus on his instructions. If she had a clear objective, it might help keep her rising fear at bay. "Okay," she called back, and winced as her voice bounced around inside the helmet. "Where do I go after that?" "It'll be straight in front of you," he shouted. "Oh, and you'll need to deliver this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a glass green bottle. "I thought I was picking something up, not delivering," she called, taking the bottle and holding it up to the eye holes. An old-fashioned label on the front bore a picture of the moon and the title "Sea of Tranquility, Finest Dark Rum." The neck was sealed with black wax, although the bottle seemed to be empty. She gave it an experimental shake and something light and feathery rattled around inside it. She did her best to see what it was, but the glass of the bottle was too thick and dark to see through properly. She fumbled it into a large leather pocket attached to the front of the suit. "You are technically," said Wilmot, "but there won't be actually anything for you to pick up." "Well, there will be, but you won't be able to pick it up. You'll see what I mean when you get there." "Oh," said Susie. I don't see." "Don't worry," he said. "It'll all make sense once you meet the chief. Are you ready?" "I think so. Who's the chief?" "He's a nice man, really," said the postmaster. "Once you get past all the, well, you know." And here he pulled a face, sticking his tongue out, rolling his eyes and waving his hands around. "Best of luck." Before she could protest, he swung the airlock door shut with a crash. "What was he talking about?" Frederick asked from the depths of the nose sock. "I have no idea," she said. I suppose there's only one way to find out. A moment later, the airlock began to flood with water. It came gushing in through a gate in the floor, rising rapidly, and was around Susie's knees in just a few seconds. "What's that noise?" Frederick cried. "I can't see anything in here. Why didn't you put me somewhere I can see?" "Because I had to hide you," she said. "That sounds like water. Are we going to drown? We're going to drown, aren't we?" "Shush," said Susie. "Calm down. This is an airlock. It has to fill with water before we can open the outside door. Otherwise, the sea would rush in all at once and squash us." "OK," he said, "if you say so." "I do say so," said Susie, although she had to stop herself, holding her breath as the water reached the helmet's goggles. "It's all about equalising the pressure so that it's the same in here as it is outside. It's physics." "Physics?" He tested the word. "Is that a bit like physics?" "No," she said, gritting her teeth in annoyance. "Physics always makes sense." The water reached the ceiling of the chamber and unlocked the outer hatch. Her boots set up puffs of fine white sand as she stepped. Outside, towers of neon coral rose all around her, and clouds of fish glimmered and darted between them. The surface rolled like a broken mirror far above them, letting through fractured spears of sunlight. "It's wonderful," she breathed. "I'll have to take your word for it," grumbled Frederick. "Aren't you supposed to do something with that pipe on your head?" Oh yes! Susie had forgotten all about Wilmot's instructions to attach her air hose. Without it, she only had the air already in the suit to keep her breathing, and she doubted that would last her more than a minute or two. She looked around and saw the bright red circular nozzle protruding from the side of the HEC, beside the airlock. She reached up and a little clumsily took hold of the hose trailing from her helmet and fed it through her hands until she found the brass screw fitting at the end. Her thick gloves made it difficult to attach it to the nozzle, and she was short of breath before the hose finally clicked into place and she was able to screw it tight. A thin whistle of air filled the helmet, and she felt its cool touch on her face and neck. She heaved a deep sigh of relief. "That was close," said Frederick. "You're looking after royalty now, remember? You should be more careful." "Thanks, Your Highness," said Susie. "I'll take extra care next time." "Good idea." Susie paused to wonder whether sarcasm simply didn't exist in the impossible places, before remembering she had a job to do, and that, as beautiful as this place was, she would feel much safer once she was looking at it from the inside of the carriage. She looked around until she saw a large, jagged shape sticking up amongst the coral, a short distance away. "That looks like a shipwreck," she said. "Do you think that's where we're supposed to go?" "I've no idea," said Frederick. "You're the postie." Susie chewed a stray length of her hair that had fallen across her face. "I can't see anything else around here," she said. "Maybe we're going to meet a mermaid." She gave a weak laugh and started towards the wreck, being careful not to tread on any of the coral. "Could we actually meet a mermaid?" she asked. "I mean, do they exist here?" "Maybe," he replied. "Mermaids, mermen, merbeasts, were-sharks, were-squid, flying squid, land squid, giant eels, electric eels, nuclear eels. They all exist somewhere in the Union." Susie shivered and wished she hadn't asked. Some of those creatures sounded decidedly unpleasant, and although the reef looked tranquil, she tried to keep an eye on the darker crevices within the coral. "So, Your Highness," she said, looking for a distraction, "how does a prince end up stuck inside a snow globe? And how does the snow globe end up getting mailed to an evil witch?" "Well, it's a long story," said Frederick. "So I guessed," she said. "I'm all ears." He sighed again. "I won't bore you with the details, but I'm next in line to the throne. That means I'm going to be king one day, and that's kind of a big deal." "It sounds like it," said Susie. "And not to boast or anything, but the people of the Western Fenlands can't wait till I'm in charge. I'm just really, really popular there." "Naturally," Susie said flatly. "So what happened?" "I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I overheard something I wasn't supposed to," said Frederick. a plot to overthrow the kingdom. Wow, said Susie, genuinely shocked. That's pretty serious. I know, he said, sounding morose. When I tried to raise the alarm, a remote spell came out of nowhere and I found myself stuck in this stupid ornament. Crepuscular's curse, gasped Susie. So she's behind the plot. Do you know what the worst thing is, said Frederick. As soon as I've been cursed, my bodyguards, the two people I trusted most in all the Union, packaged me up and put me in the post to the Obsidian Tower. They'd been working with Crepuscular all along. His voice wavered, and Susie felt a rush of sadness for the boy. I'm sorry, she said, that's terrible. It is, he agreed. I mean, a novelty frog. She didn't even turn me into something classy, like a candlestick or a clock. Susie plodded on towards the wreck. It was certainly a troubling story, and it had raised the spectre of Crepuscular again in her mind. If the old woman knew that Frederick was on to her, surely she would do anything to silence him. The shadows beneath the coral seemed a shade darker than they had a moment ago, and she tried not to look at them too closely. But there was something else as well. She could feel that little itch in her brain again. Something didn't quite add up. Hang on, she said, coming to a sudden stop. When you asked me to rescue you, you said the fate of all the impossible places depended upon it. Did I? Frederick's tone of surprise didn't quite ring true. Are you sure I didn't say the fate of an impossible place depended upon it? I'm positive, she said. It's one of the reasons I helped you. You are under a lot of stress, he said. Perhaps memory's just playing tricks on you. My memory's perfect, Susie thought, which means you were either lying then or you're lying now. She almost gave voice to that thought, but instinct told her to keep it to herself for a while longer. Maybe Frederick had just been exaggerating his importance to make sure she saved him from the tower. But now that she had, why not just admit it? The itch refused to fade. She had a puzzle to solve. She didn't have all the pieces yet, but she guessed Frederick would clam up if she pushed him too hard. She'd have to wait and hope he gave her something away accidentally. Perhaps you're right, she said, with studied patience. Come on, I want to see what's in that wreck. And we are going to leave it there for today. So tomorrow is chapter 10, A Watery Grave. Tune in to find out what happens. Bye for now.